Something about that music just always gets me jazzed. But welcome to the Deconstructing Data podcast and live stream. I'm Jessie, Lizak, CMO at BDEX, along with BDEX's founder and CEO, David Finkelstein. Good to see you, David. I know we were talking earlier this week. Have you mentioned the new product here at all? I don't
Yeah,
know. I'll be careful
yeah.
about mentioning it, but what's new?
Yeah, I think we did. And that's one of the things I was going to mention also is just been a busy week on two segment and just, working on the launch and just, working on a lot of back end stuff for it mostly. And the team's also working on an MCP server for BDEX. So like there's a lot going on right now. So yeah, we've been busy.
Awesome. I love the idea of
And
an
yes, the music always gets me to kind of go like this.
Yeah, it started bobbing a little bit. I found
Yeah.
myself like, wow, even after a couple of years, that music still gets me going.
Yeah.
But today we have another really exciting guest on Deconstructing Data. Should have asked the pronunciation of her last name pre-show. So I'll try not to butcher it. We'll ask her when she gets on. But we want to welcome on Holly Enneking. She's the Vice President of Marketing at Markup AI. And she is focused on building an AI native go-to-market strategy that redefines how the company connects with its audience. So before she was at Markup AI, she held marketing leadership roles at Bolster, Lev, and Return Path, where she built teams and programs that generated hundreds of millions in pipeline. She's also a co-author of Startup CXO and the co-founder of Indie Marketers, connecting marketing professionals across Indianapolis, right here in the Midwest. Welcome to the show, Holly.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. And you were so close, Enneking, but
And
you
it's
right there.
thank you.
Welcome to the show, Holly. This is we really appreciate you joining us today, and we'd love for you to kick it off for us. Give our listeners and viewers a chance to get to know you a little bit about your background, maybe a little more than Jessie went into, and share a little more about it, and what led you to join Markup AI and what Markup AI is doing for its customers today.
Yeah, happy to. Well, so excited to be here. My background in marketing has primarily been in the brand and digital space. That's the area of marketing that I came up in and really personally love and find a lot of energy in doing. But especially over time, as I've been in leadership roles and have jumped from many different types of businesses, from big SaaS business to a services business to a really early stage startup. One of the things that has always been sort of a consistent thread for me has been content and how we've been using content as a means to build brand, to attract attention, to drive demand generation. And coming into Markup and joining the team here was really exciting for me because I'm so passionate about the tool that we're building and what the team is trying to do when it comes to helping marketers like myself who are creating a lot of content on our own and now also starting to generate tons and tons of content to be able to actually feel good about the content that we're putting out in the world when it's AI generated. That can be a really tricky bar to sort of navigate as far as, is it something that sounds like me? Is it something I want to put my name on, my brand's name on? Is it talking to the people I care about? And is it saying everything that's actually true and accurate? And, the work to get something from that first draft actually ready to publish has become a real bottleneck. And I'm really excited about the tools that we're building and the agents that we're bringing to market to help marketers do that. And within an organization that is prioritizing being AI native, AI first, and really supporting our team and being people who are adopting AI and testing it and bringing learnings and ideas and best practices to the rest of the organization has been incredibly exciting for me as well. So also being in any sort of organization that I get to work with really great people. The thing that I love most about Markup is being able to work with some folks that I've worked with multiple times before. So our CEO, our CTO, and some others are folks that this is now my second or third time around working with some of them. And so whenever you can find good people, you hang on to them. And I've been lucky to do just that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's awesome. Yeah, my partner and I've worked together for 30 years now. So,
Amazing.
so I get it. Yeah, I get
Yep.
it for sure. Absolutely. So, marketing and data go hand in hand these days, very much so. And so one of the first things we'll jump into is our first topic, measuring marketing beyond attribution. So I'd love to get your take on and your thoughts on this.
Yeah, I think, Marketing attribution is always a struggle. It can feel fake, it can feel made up. It's only gotten worse over time, and I think AI has really just accelerated the breakdown of how teams are thinking about attribution and what that means for them and what they want to be measuring and how are they reporting out success to, their leadership, their board, whoever that may be. What we know is that attribution models were really built for a world where buyers were clicking on links in a sequence. Now, buyers
Mhm.
are reading some AI summaries. They are watching a LinkedIn video that someone sent them. They're finding, content in Slack communities that they're members of or looking on Reddit. And then they're showing up to a demo that they've, signed up for already pretty well down the decision-making path. And, your UTMs or any of the tracking data that you have in place is not necessarily catching all of those things. But what's really hard is that the dashboards are still showing something. And so then there's an assumption either with your leadership or your board or the rest of your team internally that that what is being tracked is accurate, but so much of it is being missed. And that can be where it gets really tricky for teams to understand, in this new world of AI search and dark social, what is actually working, what can they actually measure, what are they looking for. And so it really is requiring teams to step back and think, about, when we're this whole new distribution channel and engagement mechanism has really changed, what is it that we can be keeping our eyes on and making these judgment calls around about what truly is and is not working when we can't necessarily rely on our traditional data sources in order to help us do that.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Attribution has become, more and more difficult to measure given the different channels that everybody's, communicating on and how many touches it takes for a person to actually convert. And then you end up in the situation where like, okay, who gets credit for that conversion, right? And so talk to me about like where do you see like if I'm a business, I'm a marketer, I'm trying to figure out like what is the one most measurable thing I could be doing when it comes to attribution?
I think really the best thing that marketers can be doing is figuring out how to find ways to connect what you're doing back to revenue. That is a
Mhm.
language that the rest of the leadership team is speaking, your board is speaking, as much as marketing leaders can do to be able to tie activity back to revenue and rethinking, what that looks like. That may be as simple as having your sales team asking prospects what they've heard about you, how did they come across your brand. We've been doing this with our team and have gotten some really fantastic insights around prompts that they were using in ChatGPT, for example, in order to learn about us and get connected. That I would have no way right now of knowing that that search was happening because they didn't actually click on anything. There would be no attribution, even with Google Analytics new rollout of additional source information and thinking about LLMs in that sense. That wouldn't be data that I would have if it hadn't been asked. And so sometimes it can mean, going back to some basics to figure out, what it is that is really driving people towards you. And then looking at some other metrics as well. You can think about things like your pipeline velocity or looking at, your churn numbers internally, like where are things going up or down, where are moments happening that is data that you can track on a broader scale that isn't getting so tied down into individual tactics and channels. Those can give you some better insight, especially if you have a good sense, as a leader around what the activities that you have in market, who you're trying to target against those segments and what that looks like. You can start making inferences into where you're actually moving the needle and where you're not, and where you can lean in or where you need to maybe pull back a little bit. But it's definitely something that requires a lot of internal communication, coordination, and just visibility into what's changing and why. That can be the hardest challenge for a marketer, is especially going back to this idea of, some things are being tracked. So there is some level of data and people feel really comfortable in that sort of like known existing quantity of data that maybe they're used to. You've got to do some work in order to help people reframe their thinking and be able to tie back into the activities that they really care about.
I love that. And I know Jesse's going to love that too, because that's qualitative data. And she always talks about that, the importance of that. But it's true. And think about like I think when I think about that, I think about this. I think about the effect that had, that whatever that attribution is had on that consumer, on that person, right? So you ask them how they heard about you.
Mhm.
And the honest truth is you may have touched them 5, 6, 10 times, right? But the one that they remember is the one they're going to share with you. And so now you learn from that, you learn what has been the most impactful by getting that feedback. And if you don't ask, then you don't learn that.
Yeah, that's such a great point. I love that, especially the idea of like what stands out most to them, because yeah, you're completely right. The number of touches it takes for anyone to convert at this point continues. I feel like every day I could look up that stat and it would be higher than it was the day that I looked at previously. And so, being able to dig in a little deeper and find that nugget, what was that message, that channel, that engagement that like really, pushed them over the edge? And it may not have been the most recent one. It may have been any of them in the midst of that. Can be really insightful. And you're right. You don't know unless you ask in a lot of cases anymore.
Yeah,
definitely. And I'm sitting here nodding. I love the qualitative data. It really is. It helps you get to the bottom of it. But anyway, we got some questions from the audience. So Sketcher's World is asking, with LLM source traffic data proving so unreliable right now, how do you see marketing attribution evolving?
Yeah, I think this goes back to communication, and being able to provide context around what you're seeing, what it means, and why it may not be accurate. This is especially when it comes to this LLM traffic, AEO, GEO. I mean, we can't even decide what we want to call it. So obviously things aren't decided.
Right.
That like being able to say, here's what we're seeing, here's what directionally this is telling us, but we need to take this with a giant grain of salt. We're starting to get this data. Everyone's sort of in this place of figuring out, these are the things that I'm thinking about. Here's what I care about. These are the prompts that we're looking at, the types of keywords that we're looking for. And if you do have some sort of insight into, traffic that you're seeing, and then maybe you can think about what that means as far as, traffic that's coming from an LLM that is trackable, what you're seeing as far as like their time on site, their bounce rate, other pages that they're looking at. That can be informative and instructive and not necessarily need to throw it all out because there's not, perfect data there. But making sure that you're telling a coherent, clear, concise story to the rest of the team about what you're actually seeing, what it means, and contextualizing it, and then saying it many, many, many times because they will not remember and you'll have to say it again. I think that is really the most important thing you can do, like continuing to drive home that like, this is all still in flux. We are all out here trying to figure it out together. And really, it's an opportunity for a lot of teams to really, put a line in the sand for how they're going to think about it and what it's going to look like for them, rather than, some things already being decided and having to follow. Like, we're writing the best practices right now, which is pretty exciting.
I love that. Well, we better transition into personalization metrics that matter. And when you think of personalization, what do you think of specifically? Because, I think we think a lot about personalization. I mean, wow, first name and merge fields, and think of like a mail merger, and how many postcards have you gotten where you were called your neighbor's name or something like that? That's a lot of the stuff that BDEX can help with. So we talk about personalization a lot, but personalization can be a wide range of things. So what do you think of with personalization metrics that matter?
Yeah, so I think about a couple of things here. So one of them is obviously like what you said. You got to get some of the basics right. You got to get the names, you got to get the company, you got to get, locations, all of those things. And if you're working with bad data, any personalization that you're going to have is going to fall immediately flat. Having the right data in order to drive personalization is table stakes. Like, if you can't get that data right and you can't rely on it, you have got to find some other ways to really get that to a place where you can be confident or change your strategy, because bad personalization is just immediate trust lost, lack of credibility. Like, it is hard to come back from something like that, especially when there's so much content, so much potential for engagement. Your audience it just takes one wrong move anymore to lose somebody. And so you've got to get that right. That's sort of bucket one that I think about with personalization. The second sort of bucket I like to think about when it comes to personalization is much more experiential. So less about like the person's, PII necessarily, and much more about, what are the scenario that they might be in that we can reach them at the right moment based on the last experience that they had with us. So, thinking about like event engagement, either in person or virtually, and how you're following up and personalizing a follow-up based on that activity. Also thinking about, if you are serving maybe multiple ICPs or personas that are, key for your business, you're probably not talking to all of them or you shouldn't be talking to all of them with the exact same language and the exact same use cases and scenarios. And so really personalizing your outreach based on what you know about their job, their responsibilities, the way that they would be using your product, all of that really falls into a personalization camp as well. And having that right is just as important as having someone's name right. If I follow up with someone for a webinar, for example, talking about thanks for being on the webinar and asking a great question, and they didn't, again, credibility loss. So you've got to make sure that all of that data is accurate. But getting a little creative with how we're thinking about personalization, I think, can expand our horizons a little bit too, and allow us to maybe move out of just like the name company personalization and get into more experiential, like how am I really serving you and your particular needs as, an audience that I'm trying to reach out and add value to.
Yeah, that's great feedback. I'm going to take this as an opportunity to plug our new product because that's, this is something that we think that we're doing something unique in that space with 2Segment, which is personalization based on personality analysis. And so what we're doing is like taking the data enrichment layer of your customers and enriching the data, and then using that data to understand and do an actual, using AI to do a personality analysis. Because when it comes to like personalization, to your point, we shouldn't be sending the same message to everybody. But then when you think about the different ways that different people think, right? Some people are more creative, some people are more pragmatic, and you need to communicate differently to those different groups. And so if you're able to, use this level of data enrichment and personality analysis to actually segment based on not just what did they buy or what are their interests or where do they live, what are their demographics, but who are they? What type of person are they? Then you can actually send a message to them that is going to, that is going to, move them in a way differently. And everybody, everybody's moved by something different, right? Depending on what your personality is. So I think that is a level of personalization that now with, thanks to AI, I think that we can get to even, more advanced level of personalization that we haven't necessarily seen before.
Oh my gosh, I love that point so much. I think thinking about how you can reach out and really capture the attention of your audience from that perspective is so powerful. And you're right, like AI gives us an opportunity to really expand on that and dig into it in a way that we've never really been in before. And I think that is so incredibly exciting and like opens up so many new possibilities. I think that's such an interesting way to frame it and to think about even another layer deeper into how you can connect with your audience. I know that, those are the things for me that really move the needle of like, oh my gosh, they really understand me or they really get what my challenge is. Like those are the messages we all get, the millions of, inbound LinkedIn requests and DMs and emails in our inboxes and now phone calls and text message and random calendar invites. But like, if I feel like you really understand me and are like speaking my language, like that really moves the needle.
Speaking of those random calendar invites, man, those are so annoying.
It's awful. Whoever had that idea? Like, we need to have an intervention, a conversation. Like, my calendar is already out of control. The last thing I need is an unsolicited meeting on my calendar.
Yeah, I don't get that. I don't know how that's actually working for anybody. It's so annoying.
Calendar
Yeah,
spam.
I'd love to know what the conversion rate on that. Like, how often does it actually work?
I have no idea. I can't imagine because I go through the effort of deleting it off my calendar without like RSVPing because I don't even want them to know that I'm not going to be there. I just want to be like, you've annoyed me so much that I hope you show up for the meeting and wait for me.
Yes, I know. Yeah, those are the worst. We got another question in the comments saying,
Mm.
when building a personalization matrix that actually matters, how do you prevent over segmentation so your marketing team doesn't burn out creating 50 different variations of the same campaign?
That's a great question. I love that. Yeah, I'm gonna defer to Holly because she's the marketing expert, but for sure, I mean, I think that's where AI can absolutely be helpful, right?
Yeah, I think AI can definitely be helpful. I think you're right though to be concerned about like burnout and just like overcomplication. I think that's
Yeah.
one of the challenges. We were having this conversation a little bit before we started of like the tools that AI gives us can make things seem like so much easier. Oh, I can absolutely do that. Why wouldn't I do it? But then when you take a step back, like, is 50 different iterations actually serving you and helping you more effectively communicate? I think it goes back to like, how are you really breaking down? Like, who are you reaching out to? What are the things that must be true that we really care about that we know is going to resonate? And how do we focus on those and like really dial in on like a core set of things that either we're thinking about in this moment, or maybe we're going to test 5 to start and we're going to see what we learn and then we're going to test another 5. Like, how do you break it down into more manageable parts so that you're actually coming away with some learnings? Like, throwing a whole bunch of things out there at once, being able to understand and interpret that is going to be so much more challenging than if you were able to really focus. Like, I think more than anything, again, Jessie and I were having a conversation about quality over quantity. I think this is absolutely a quality over quantity game of like, what is the most important thing for you to learn from these different segments? What are the most valuable segments for you based on what you know from your own pipeline and revenue are the most valuable for you? And how do you action against that? It can be really easy to fall down the path of like, oh, and this one, and this one, and this one. And then you've just got a mess on your hands. And so, as much as you can be diligent about bringing focus and clarity, I think that's only going to serve your team.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Like in 2 segment, we break it down to like, I mean, you can create unlimited segments, but on the personality analysis, we break it down to 12 different personality types. And it's like, and you don't even need to do it. Like you could probably get away with 6. But you know, you have the option to do 12. And so like, if you're going to run one campaign to retarget to all of your existing customers, at least break it down into, you know, if you're going to use the personality analysis, at least do that, you know, and you can do it 6. You don't need to do 12. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So yeah, it just
So interesting. Wow, marketing has changed so much.
Oh
So,
my gosh.
I mean, to wrap up personalization metrics that matter, looks like we got another question that popped up. She said, so it's quality over quantity. I mean, I guess, did I say that pre-show or earlier in the show? Like, I feel like that's everything these days.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, it is everything.
Data, it's content, just quality over quantity. And
Absolutely.
yeah, but any actionable advice you'd give to wrap up on personalization metrics?
Yeah, I think the last thing that maybe I would really challenge people to think about, and this is something I'm doing myself as well. My boss, our CRO, Lewis, could attest to this. We've been having a lot of conversations around MQLs. MQLs are one of those like vanity metrics that volume can feel like a good like flag of I've hit a number, I've brought in great, marketing qualified leads for our sellers, and then you can wash your hands of it and move away. And that is just not something that it can be or should be acceptable for a modern marketing team anymore. It can certainly be an indicator that you are driving some engagement, that you're reaching audiences in a meaningful way, like you're saying something that's driving it. But are those then actually leading into any discovery calls? Are you getting meetings booked? Are they converting into opportunities? Those are the metrics that really, again, get you back to that conversation around revenue and get you out of these sort of vanity metrics. I think some of the other metrics like, click-through rate is a really, challenging one, not because it's inflated, but because it's really falling off. Like website traffic and click-through rates have really gone through the floor because of how people are searching now and how that has changed so much with AEO, GEO, again, all of the EOs and how people are thinking about like the Google search results. You're doing a lot of reading, you're not necessarily clicking through. And so it can feel like, oh my gosh, there's this huge challenge because we're not getting the traffic, we're not getting the click-throughs that we used to see from some of these other sources. And really, it's just a symptom of people's behavior changing and not necessarily that your content isn't reaching people in the same way. And so that means we have to rethink about what we're tracking, what our analytics are, how we're, categorizing them back to our team. So I think that those are ones that teams should be taking a hard look at and figuring out how they're reframing their own thinking and then the rest of their company's internal thinking about those.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, I think that website metrics are so different now than they were just 6 months or a year ago. People are doing all their research within the LLMs. And then once they make their decision, then they go to the website and then they buy.
And it's a totally different sales cycle. Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, let's get into our third topic, which is human judgment in AI analytics. And we hear this all the time. We got to keep a human in the loop, but would love to hear your perspective on human judgment, Holly.
Yes, I think the human in the loop has never been more important. I worry for the companies that I see who are like, I laid off my entire marketing team and I run everything through Claude or ChatGPT or whatever LLM of choice. Like, what you have done is you have really stripped away any of the judgment, the knowledge, the expertise, the like lived day-to-day work of a marketer who has been in the weeds, in the data, doing the work, who can then tell you what it is that you're seeing and what needs to be done next. Anything that requires any sort of context rather than just pattern matching on data requires you to have human judgment. So that can look like, you've got a big spike in churn. That could actually be a signal of a product gap and not actually a customer success failure. While it may look like one or the other on its surface, it really takes a person to dig in and spend some time in order to understand what is really happening here. You can also have a campaign that underperforms. Maybe it was because the creative was wrong and you had, a sort of a misalignment in your messaging, or your CTA wasn't strong enough or what have you. It could also be that your timing was really off. Like, that isn't something that some data pattern matching is going to be able to tell you. It really requires human knowledge and expertise, an evaluation, a judgment call on what's actually happening. And AI is really great at helping us see what is happening. We need a human still who can tell us why and what it actually means and what you do next.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent of like collecting the data and then feeding the data to the AI and let the AI do the analysis and then review the analysis. You can't let AI do the entire process.
Yes. Yeah. And this is a great example of where you can see AI just getting things wrong. If you maybe overload your prompt on data for one area that you're thinking about, maybe say you're looking at pipeline and you've got a lot of data from your marketing team around what they're doing and not doing, but maybe you don't have the same volume of data for your sales team. The analysis that you're going to get back from ChatGPT or Claude in that sense is going to be much more heavily skewed towards challenges or opportunities on the marketing side because it doesn't have comparable data on the sales side. So then you've already set yourself up for failure because you're not giving enough of the data at an equitable rate for those two pieces of the equation. So you're naturally going to come away with answers from, an LLM that are not necessarily going to serve you. So you have to be really cognizant about like, what are you actually feeding into it? Is it truly representative of what you're thinking about? Or is it just like the pieces that you happen to have on hand in that moment? Like, what other gaps do you need to be filling? So I really recommend like people take like you said, take those all with a grain of salt, because it is just as likely to hallucinate a solution for you or give you a recommendation that you've already put into practice that, a human looking at it is going to know in 2 seconds, whether or not that's actually relevant for you. You've got to have that person who can take a look at the feedback and make a judgment call and make sure that all of the right information is actually going into it. It's one of those scenarios like your prompt in is going to be like what you're putting into it is how good of a prompt you're going to or output you're going to get back from it. Good in, good out, bad in, bad out.
Yeah, yep. I have written some of the longest prompts ever, like because you get once you sort of get into the weeds of it and you start to realize, okay, well, I want you to do this, but I need you to look at this, but I need you to analyze that, and then you can't analyze that without doing this. And before I know it, I've written like a white paper on how to
Yes.
do this analysis, you know?
Before you know it, you're writing a prompt to write your prompt.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Like summarize all of this and put it into a prompt that I can do this. Like, yes, no, definitely done that.
Yeah. That's one of the things I really like that Claude does is like when I give it, you know, it does it really well in tasks and routines. You can give it like this long explanation of what you want it to do, and then it writes it into a prompt for itself so that when it runs that routine next time, it refers back to that prompt that it wrote. And what's cool about that is when you give it those instructions, you can then review that prompt that it wrote for itself, and it writes it in a markdown file. And you could just go into that file and say, okay, I'm going to look at this and see if it really, you know, is addressing all the points that I wanted to address. And a lot of times I'll go in there and I'll do that, and I'll just go in and tweak it because I'll realize, okay, well, it got this, but it didn't really get that. So let me add that in there. And so I'm constantly like going in and reviewing the markdown files that it creates when I sort of create a routine or a task for it to do.
Yeah, definitely. All good stuff. And that definitely takes a human in the loop. But how would you both, like, in this topic, like it's so important right now. I mean, quality over quantity is kind of the theme of the discussion, and that's really what it all comes down to, whether it's data, because even data, like when you know, number patterning and like some of the stuff that I've heard you talk about, David, some of the data engineers have worked on in the past, you just can't rely on AI for everything. You have to have a human in the loop on that stuff.
For sure. Yeah.
And on the content. So I don't know, like, how would you both wrap that topic up?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it's exactly what you said. Like, you just need to review everything, you know? And so like, same thing with the data analysis, like we're using it constantly to do different types of data analysis, but it's like, I'll write this forever long prompt and explain exactly what I want it to do. And then I'll ask it to do it. But I've seen numerous times where it does it and you think it did it really well, but then when you look at the calculations are wrong. Like, what happened? Like, I had it create an Excel document for me, and there's formulas, and this column is just literally just calculated wrong. And then the best is when you just go to it and tell it, and you're like, oh, you know, column, you know, XYZ, you know, it doesn't look right. It'll come back and say, oh yeah, you're right. I'll fix that. So like, you need that human in the loop. Like, you have to review everything that you do, content, data analysis, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think the other thing that's really important too is that things are just changing so quickly. You know, what is true one week is not necessarily true the next week. And so, you know, LLMs are really built on the past. They are not forward looking. And so, and they aren't even really today looking necessarily. And so being able to apply what you know and what you're experiencing in real time and where you think things are moving in the future, that is a real lens that you can apply to the output that an LLM just simply cannot and is not engineered to do. And so keeping that in mind as well, I think, you know, makes that human in the loop even more critical to the process.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff. Oh, we did get one more comment here from Sketchers World. If human judgment is what we use to train and evaluate AI, can AI ever become better at judging than humans themselves?
I personally, I don't think so. I mean, I could be wrong. I'm going to put that out there, but I continue to believe that lived experience, historical experience, being able to bring unique perspective is just something that I don't think, you know, LLMs are equipped to do. You know, I have yet to believe that there is any prompt that I could write that would have a, you know, more interesting, more Holly output of something than I would ever write myself, or for any brand. And I think that that's something that can't be replicated. And I think even if it tried to replicate, wouldn't land. Like, there's still so much need for authenticity. And I think even though we know that, you know, someone maybe is going to be 70% down the decision path by the time they get to us and are, you know, ready to have a conversation about buying, you are still talking to a person at that point. That may change at some point. People may be making big, you know, $1 million SaaS decisions through AI. I can't imagine what that world is going to look like personally. So that may be on the horizon, but right now it is not the case. It is still, even though we say it's B2B, it's still a person-to-person transaction that's happening. And there is nothing that an LLM or a robot could do to replace like the three of us talking, a salesperson talking to a buyer at the end of the day, no matter what, so-and-so personality an LLM can try and fake.
Yeah, I think the challenge there is that AI LLMs right now, the way they're designed is they're designed to just repeat what they've learned. That's all it is. And so that's where the training comes in. You can train it and you can teach it, and it will repeat back what it's learned, but it is not creative and it's not innovative. Go and try to ask, any of the LLMs today to create a novel idea for a business, for example. And I've done this as a practice just to see what it would say. And, it can only, it can't create something. It's not innovative. So what happens is it just says, okay, well, there's similar businesses like this. So you could create a business that would do that. Or there's similar products that do this. So you could create a product that does that. It basically is saying you can create something else that exists and compete with it, but it's not going to be able to create something that's completely innovative or creative. And so I think that's where the challenge lies to the question. You can't replace people because people have the ability, they have creative thought and they have the ability to innovate, and AI does not. Will it someday? Don't know. Maybe, but it doesn't now. So it'll be interesting if we ever get to that point, how the world will change then, and maybe it will become a world of like Terminator or something like that, because AI will take over the world at that point if it can create and innovate. But I think that's the biggest limitation for it, and that's just another reason why a human needs to be involved.
Yeah, it's a tool. It's not the human. All right, so final topic. We ask all the guests on deconstructing data, what are some of your favorite tools in your tech stack, Holly?
Yes. So I got a couple of classics. Obviously, I'm one of the marketers who made the switch from ChatGPT over to Claude. I'm a huge Claude fan. I use it constantly, all the time. It's one of my favorite tools, and I've built some really useful things in cowork, and then also projects and things that I use on a very consistent basis. So I love that, and I really have integrated into my workflow in a lot of ways. I also in our marketing day-to-day work, we are both an Apollo and a HubSpot shop. I am excited. We are moving back into HubSpot, and I'm so excited about the advancements that I've seen in that platform with the capabilities that they've built in at the contact level to really understand and get a better sense of what activity is happening, what users look like, be able to create more, again, to our personalization conversation, personalized outreach to those folks based on what HubSpot is helping us infer about them, and being able to have that integration into Apollo and the capabilities that they have in helping us with our outreach and what that looks like on a bigger scale. I think there are some really great tools that we're leveraging, and I'm really excited about there. Also, the new campaign sort of marketing hub in HubSpot. I had not been in HubSpot for about a year, and coming back in now and seeing everything that we can do to get campaigns up and running is just incredible. It has increased our ability to move campaigns more quickly out the door significantly. I'm a huge fan of it. Internally, we have two other tools that I'm a huge fan of as well. We have a platform that we call ChatGPT. It's actually something that our technical team built out for us that pulls in all of the different LLM models and allows us to use them in an internal space in order to protect more of our data, our customers' data, all of those things. And we have some great integrations into like our Google workspaces. My favorite one is an integration we have into our Google Analytics. So I can actually chat with my GA4 instance and get updates that way in order to understand our website performance, which is so much better than going into Google Analytics and trying to interpret anything in that platform because it's so frustrating and hard to manage. So I'm a really huge fan of that piece. And then selfishly, we have a tool at Markup that we're going to be releasing here in a couple of weeks that I use in Google Docs that is reviewing all of the content that I'm writing for being in our brand voice, speaking to our audience, sentence clarity. Is it full of fluff? Is it ready to be cited by AI? Have I got good snippets? Have I, am I using fresh sources? Do we have strong authority in the sources that we're citing? So it is a tool that I'm running anytime I'm writing anything, whether it's blog content, web content, email content, all of the content. I use it quite a lot, and it has really significantly increased the speed at which I'm able to get something from that Claude draft into something publish ready, whatever form that may take. So I am a huge fan of it and really excited to get it out in market in the hands of a lot of other marketers here soon.
Awesome. Sounds great. Thank you for sharing.
Definitely. I feel like I need to go check out HubSpot now. There's some updates there. But
yes.
In closing, Holly, how could listeners find you after the episode?
Yeah, so definitely reach out on LinkedIn. Always happy to get connected there. And please check us out at markup.ai. You can learn more about what we're building and sign up for our priority access list ahead of our launch that's coming up in a couple of weeks. And yeah, that would be the best way to find us.
Awesome, Holly. Thank you so much for joining us today. This has been a great show. I think our viewers and listeners got a wealth of information today, so thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Such a valuable conversation. And we always love having leaders like you on deconstructing data. So that's all for today. I'm going to go ahead and close this out with our video here. Bye, everyone. So audience members, we want to invite you to get powered by BDEX. Build authentic connections with your audience and drive unprecedented engagement. So just imagine harnessing the power of AI to craft your audiences that truly resonate with your brand, ensuring that your marketing is hitting the mark every time. We want to bring you closer to those marketing goals, and we're eager to guide you. So just visit bdex.com. You can click on the Talk to an Expert button and get powered by BDEX. Deconstructing Data is the show that makes data make sense. Every Thursday, David Finkelstein and myself, Jessie Lizak, sit down with industry experts to unpack how data really drives marketing. We do this in plain language anyone can understand. If you want real insights, real conversations, and zero jargon, tune into Deconstructing Data live on LinkedIn every Thursday at 4:15 p.m. Eastern Time.